Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second Fort Bend Independent School District Q&A session on the 2023 bond. I'm Sherry Williams. I'll be off camera as your moderator, and we have district leaders standing by to tell you about the bond and to answer any and all questions that we can.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Christy Whitbeck, your superintendent, and I'm just starting off with a welcome. I really appreciate you taking time to be informed. And we are excited to just spend a little time with you and answer any questions that might be on your mind. Hopefully this format serves you well. So I will ask the other senior leaders to introduce themselves, and then we will have Steve Bassett give us a little overview with some critical slides. Not a very long presentation because mostly this is interactive, but to give you some basic information. And then we will all take turns answering questions. I do want to state up front that I'm actually participating at the Reese Center, our Career Technical Center, because at 6:30 tonight we're celebrating the graduation of many of our students who are receiving associate's degrees and P-TECH certification. So I'll be slipping down the hall to that. But let's go ahead and start with introductions with our deputies and moving to Carolina.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Beth Martinez, and I'm Deputy Superintendent over the Academic Services side of the district. And I'm just so pleased you're all here with us this evening. Look forward to a good session. Thank you for being here.
Carolina, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Carolina Fazzetti. I'm the Executive Director for Design and Construction, and I'm here to answer any questions.
All right. Okay. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Steve Bassett. I'm Deputy Superintendent. I'm responsible for everything that's not academic, including the bond. I'm going to be leading this presentation, but you definitely have the A team with you now to answer questions. And so let me go ahead and share my screen, and we will get into the presentation. Can you guys see it okay, or which version are you seeing? Just tested this.
We can. If you can make it full screen, that's okay, but it shows up pretty well.
All right. So let me get into this. So we have 3 propositions. This is the first time we've had a bond presentation, bond election with 3 propositions required, some changes required by state law. But the first one is Prop A, and it's the biggest one by far, almost $1.2 billion. I think half of that is for our aging schools and facilities. You know, there's a lot of things on that list for that. You can see here. I'm not going to read it to you. But the average age of our campuses is 28 years. And so from if you have a home that's 28 years, you've been spending money on these kinds of things, a roof, or certainly a dishwasher at the very least, HVAC, all kinds of things. And so HVAC is in that 61 schools for the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And so you can see the list of stuff, but there's a lot going on in our district. We have 100 buildings, and we have a lot of use of these buildings, especially on the schools. So the kids are hard on the buildings, and a lot of repairs need to be done. So speaking of the buildings, so there's some rebuilds being done. Briargate Elementary School is going to be rebuilt if this bond passes, and so it's going to be merging with Blue Ridge Elementary while it gets built, and we're hoping that it'll open in August of 2025. And so you can see just some examples of what it would look like. It's going to be modeled after Lakeview Elementary School. And so you can see like just an example of collaborative space. And then the next one is Mission Bend. Mission Bend will also be rebuilt, and it's going to merge with Mission Glen, and it'll be slated to open in August 2025. And that'll be take after the Ferguson Elementary School, which is going to be opening this year, as well as Neal Elementary School. If you want to see what it looks like now, you can drive by Neal Elementary School. And so that's what that would look like. Clemens High School is the next one. So it's a little bit of a different story. It's our worst conditioned building. And so you probably heard a little bit about this, but here you have examples of the foundation. The foundation is going up in some places and it's going down in other places. And so that's causing problems. You can see all kinds of stuff there, just some of the pictures, but we have a lot of stuff on our website specifically for Clemens if you have questions about that and the conditions, and there's some other pictures and all. So we're still a growing district, and so we do need some new schools. Middle school 16, where we need to relieve the growth in the 521 corridor, and then elementary will need one in the 521 corridor as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to remodel Ferndale Henry, and so it's going to save quite a bit of money by doing that. It's still a very good building. It's not that old, but we will need to renovate it and add on to it so we could have 1,000 capacity for students. And so that'll help with all that growth over there. That place is exploding. And we are going to move the Ferndale Henry alternative program into the middle of the district. It'll be at MR Wood, where it used to be some time ago. And so that's the plan for that. The other elementary school that's needed to relieve Harvest Green, so in the Grand Parkway corridor. And so those are the new schools that are being built as part of the bond. All right, transportation. Transportation is a big deal for us, and so we transport 35,000 kids a day, and that's a lot. And we're traveling the circumference of the earth, pretty much more than that every day. So we need new buses. We also need a new transportation center, and that's going to be also in the 521 corridor. And then we're also going to hopefully have some kind of smart tags to help us help families, know where their kids are and so know where their bus is, and so just overall improve safety and just have better knowledge and just customer service in terms of, hey, well, when is my child going to be picked up, or when are they going to be dropped off? And so that's something that's going to be able to help everybody. 30 million is allocated for safety and security, and so this includes more security cameras, floor-mounted door locks. You can see the list there. New vehicles. Safety and security is a very high priority for us. You can see, we want to make sure our officers have the weapons that they need for when they need it. And so we are definitely need to make these kinds of investments very important to us. All right. So our network is 8 years old. It was funded with bond 2014. And we really work that network. We have over 100 buildings, and then we have, with counting students and staff, we're over 90,000 people using the network on a regular basis, and it needs to be refreshed. 8 years for a network. I mean, those are in IT terms, this is outdated, and we do have inconsistencies in the network, and it really does need to be replaced. So keeping with the technology theme, we have a Proposition B for the first time. And so state law requires a separate proposition if you're going to include devices in a bond. And we do need to refresh computers for our students and staff. And so 52 million of this overall bond is devoted to this effort. And one of the reasons why this need is because STAR testing now, and that's going on in the district this time, that's all being done on computers now. No more paper and pens and whatever else. And so we do need those computers, and that is part of this. And so we have Proposition B. Proposition C is for an auditorium. So why is this on here? Well, if you're going to have a site that can be used, it's not at a campus, it can be used by multiple campuses, it has to also be its own proposition. And so right now we have two swim centers. We have one in the Hodges Bend, and we have the original one closer to central office in the central of the district. And so we don't have anything on the east side at all. If you think about it, we have 80,000 students. Our friends at Katy, they have 90,000 students. They actually have 7 swim centers. And so we would have 3 if the bond passes. This would serve the southeast side of the district. This would be actually close to, this is where middle school 16 would be proposed to be at the over there along close to 521 at Highway 6 and Post Oak Drive. All right, let's talk a little bit about funding and taxes. Our tax rate has gone down to $1.13. It's not the lowest in the area, but it is one of the lower ones. And so you can see that there, $1.13. We do feel like we give a good value in comparison to some of the other districts. I mean, our friends across the river, Lamar, they're at $1.24. Katy, which I mentioned earlier, they're 17 pennies higher than us at $1.30. And so we do compare well from that perspective. Okay, so what's the impact from a tax perspective? For propositions A, B, and C combined, if you think about the average home of our district, the average home has a taxable value of $300,000. And so we're looking at the impact for that person being $2.50 a month. So it's pretty much the cost of a junior Whataburger, per month for the average home. Now, if your home value is $600, well, then it's double that. It's $5 a month. Okay, but this just gives some perspective in terms of what the tax impact would be. Now, for our senior citizens that have gotten the exemption, age 65 and older, they would not be impacted by the bond because their values would be frozen, and so they wouldn't have any impact and wouldn't cost them anything. Now, let's get to the ballot language. So a couple of differences between the last time we had a bond in 2018. Again, it's been 5 years since we've had the bond. It's a long time when you have as many facilities as we have. But a couple things changed. Well, we have the propositions, which I already talked about. But one thing that you'll notice about this bond, whenever you're looking at the propositions, is that because of 2019 law, you're going to see at the bottom of each of these propositions in big capital letters, this is a property tax increase. Right. And so everybody's going to see that, even if you're a senior and your tax amount is frozen, everybody that goes into the voting booth, they will see this. And so it is a property tax increase, but we're talking about 1 penny. We're talking about for the average homeowner the impact is $2.50. So that's for our average homeowner. Early voting has already started. I managed to vote today. I was out of town yesterday, voted today. So got my sticker. Happy about that. But anyway, it ends May 2nd. Now, one thing that's very different about this time for early voting is that we are going to have early voting available on Saturday and Sunday of this coming weekend. And so there's really no excuse for folks to get out and vote. And election day is Saturday, May 6th. All right, so let me, I'm going to stop sharing and we can take any questions that you guys have.
Thank you, Steve. And every time you mention a junior Whataburger, it makes me hungry. Our first question is from Caroline Rochkova, and she wants to know who can vote, keeping in mind that some people may live in Fort Bend County, but do not live in Fort Bend ISD.
Yeah, you have to be a resident of Fort Bend ISD. And so the county knows where folks live. And if you went to a voting location and you're, you can try, okay, but if you went to a location and they maybe kick you, they might just say, well, sorry, you can't vote, you're not in the district. And so but that is up to the county. The county is the one who manages the election process for us.
And so we encourage anyone 18 or above who's registered who lives in Fort Bend ISD to please vote. Dr. Whitbeck, perhaps you'd like to speak to why we can never tell people vote for this or vote against it.
Sure, it's just part of the laws. We need to remain clear, and we can certainly provide facts, but we're really not to advocate. We're just more we're designated to inform. And that would be the easiest way of describing it. And that's what we try to do.
Thank you, Carolina. This next question is for you, and you've answered it so much, we're going to do a remix of your answer. But it's a good question every time. Where will the students at Clements be while Clements is being rebuilt?
And so the students at Clements will actually stay in place. Students will continue to attend Clements High School while we build the new building. We developed a master plan to actually make sure that this plan was feasible. And so what we would do is we would demo and tear down all the fields and take over that area so that we can build the new building, while the students still attend the existing building. Once the new building's ready, we would transfer students into the new building so that then we can demolish the existing building and then build fields instead.
And I know this came up at one of our public sessions. Some parents were concerned about noise and safety and traffic during construction. Would you speak to that?
Absolutely. And so there's a lot of planning that would happen behind the scenes after the bond passes. Rebuilding a high school with an occupied campus is one of the most complex projects a school district can take on. And so the planning that happens behind the scenes ensures that we work with a contractor to maintain safety for students. Contractors, subcontractors would never cross paths with students. And so the detailed plan really separates the campus and the facilities with fencing and tight security standards to make sure that we can keep our students safe.
Thank you. And I think this next question, by the way, that question was from Chris Lee. Thank you, Mr. Lee. This next question I'll throw out to the entire group. It has to do with the new elementary school in the Harvest Green area. Why are we building a school in that area? Where will it be built? And tell us something about it.
Well, the demographer projections show that we're going to need another elementary school in that area. Harvest Green just has explosive growth. They're planning over 1,000 additional rooftops, in that area. And so the land hasn't been finalized, although we have an eye on some property that we're talking to the developers about, but can't really give you any specifics about that because it's, it still hasn't been decided. It hasn't been purchased yet. But we do have funds allocated for that already. This isn't, we don't need bond 2023 to help us from a land purchase perspective. Land is not in the bond funds. So we do have an allocation, but we haven't finished that deal yet. But that is where it's needed. It's really just based on growth. There's just so many more homes going up in that area over there.
And I'll just add that the current school, Neal Elementary, that is in Harvest Green, is already very large, as is Malala, as is Madden, as is Pecan Grove, as anything that you could move to doesn't really have the capacity to hold that overflow. So it's not something we can just simply change boundaries and solve the problem, because we are looking at that and we are doing that in certain areas of the district. But in this area, there's not enough places to move the growth to. And we have not picked a design also for this school. As Steve mentioned, we're rebuilding designs we own, which is a cost savings. We're doing that for Briargate and for Mission Bend, but we have not determined exactly what that would be in Harvest Green at this time. But we'll look closely at what we already own. We'll look closely at the land. The lot determines a lot of further discussion. So that's all to be determined.
Thank you. And that question was from Aryan. The next question is from Daryl Ferguson. He says, property appraisals increased 15% this year. Why raise taxes now? The Fort Bend County Appraisal District already has.
Okay, so I'll take this one. The property taxes that we collect from our property value growth that we have, and I have it as well. I mean, I'm a taxpayer. We have two different tax rates. We have the general fund, the maintenance and operations tax rate, and that is our biggest tax rate. It's I think 86 pennies, or 86 cents. Our other tax rate, the debt service, is 27 cents. On the M&O side and the general fund side, that's what's used to pay salaries. That's for teachers, and it's used for benefits and for utilities, all those kinds of expenses. For all of the additional collections that we collect, if we collect $20 million more dollars, okay, because we have higher property values, the state, and we have the same number of kids this year versus last year, let's just say, because our revenue is based on enrollment. If we have the same number of students one year over the next, and we collect $20 million more in property taxes, the state pays us exactly $20 million less, dollar for dollar, okay? And so we don't benefit from that property value growth, and everybody's paying, including us. So we're paying into that. The state is one that just pays us less. Now, this property value growth, they have over the past several years told us that we need to reduce our M&O tax rate, our maintenance operations tax rate, and that's why it has gone down some over the years. It went down 5.5 pennies last year. The year before that, I think it went down 3 pennies or something like that. And so that tax rate has been going down. And as we have property value growth, I think it will continue to go down because, again, we're not benefiting from it. The state benefits from that growth because they just pay us less. Now, on the debt side, it's a whole other equation. We can't use the general fund money to, well, we could use the general fund money to pay for bonds and whatever else, but we can't afford that. And so we're doing everything that we're talking about here on the bond side, on our debt service side. And so we see that going up a penny, okay? But I don't think that we will increase that that tax rate until we do have a decline on the other side. That being said, the impact of that 1 penny increase to the tax rate is going to be $2.50 for the average taxpayer. And so we're very clear that that is what the impact would be, you know, for our property owners. But it is frustrating when everybody's, you know, writing out bigger checks to Fort Bend County, and I get it. But the you know, our biggest tax rate by far, much bigger than the debt service side, we're not benefiting from that. And the fact that we are having property value growth on the debt service side, that allows us to handle a bond of this size by just having a very small increase.
And Steve, on that note, I know Dr. Whitbeck was there and she heard it at a Q&A session last night at Bush High School. People are wondering, well, what is the state going to do? School funding is from the state. And so what do we think the state will do? What do we want the state to do? And how much is too little and how much would be just right?
Oh, goodness. Okay. We could spend a lot of time on this. And so I want to get to, you know, as many questions as we can. We do think the state's going to step up and give us some increase. But the issue is whether or not it's going to be as poor as a $50 increase that I've seen gain a lot of traction, or as high as, you know, I think almost $600 per student that J.C. Jatan has proposed, along with an inflation rider. And we would much rather prefer something along those lines. We know that the state has the biggest surplus it's ever had, over $30 billion, I think, you know, closer to $35 billion. And we understand that property tax relief is a big component of it. And like I said, everybody on this call, we're all taxpayers. So we like that idea. That being said, most of our folks and out there don't understand that the funding that schools get in Texas does not compare well to the other states. When you look at things on a state-by-state basis, and there's a lot of different ways to measure it, we're ranked 41st. I've seen that. I've seen us ranked as low as 48th. And we also have a teacher shortage. And it's also hard to fill bus driver jobs throughout the state. And so while I think that there's enough money to give a good decrease to property taxes, but I do think that certainly more needs to be put in than what they're currently planning right now, or at least what I'm seeing right now, to help all school districts with the teacher shortage, because we're not just suffering from the teacher shortage. We're just a symptom of it. You can see it everywhere. All school districts throughout the state are experiencing this shortage. And so we're hoping that they do more. And I do think that at the end, they're going to do more, because like right now, I've heard that all of the state employees are going to get a 5% raise. That's great. It's been a long time since they've gotten a raise like that. But what's inflation been? Since 2019, inflation has been 17%. So while 5% sounds like a lot, still, what they're talking about for us, we wouldn't come even close to that on a raise, not anywhere close to that. And so I think that political reality, I hope, will take effect, and for them to step up and do more. But we'll have to wait and see.
Dr. Whitbeck, we know you have to leave soon. In fact, you guys, as she said at the beginning, she's going to a graduation ceremony for our high school students who are concurrently getting an associate's degree. So that's really amazing. Do you want to add in and just say a few words about, people sometimes say, well, these districts are just wasting money. They have enough money. Why do we need a tax increase? Why do we need a bond? Why does the state need to give more?
Well, that's very loaded, Sherry. But intentionally. In reality, though, Steve shared, the quandary that we're watching, we're waiting. We don't know exactly what will happen. We are hoping for some considerable amount of change, because there hasn't been anything. We've been through COVID. We do have a nationwide teacher shortage, so I'm hopeful. But we're watching. That's about all we can do on that. But I think as far as a bond, I think just keep in mind that the bond is more for the things we see, the things that last more than 5 years. It's the roofs, it's the chillers, it's the actual buildings, it's buses, things of that nature. And when we talk about our operating budget, as Steve mentioned, you know, this is where I want the community to know we have been working so hard for the last 18 months in reducing our spending. We reduced almost 16 million last summer for this current budget. And to date, we've been slicing, dicing, looking very hard, especially at the senior level jobs. And we are preparing for at least $23 million in savings for the proposed budget that our board will be presented with and hopefully adopt in June. So behind the scenes, nearly $40 million in a year and a half. And that's on the spending side, the operational side. And part of that is because we are really wanting to take care of our employees. When Steve mentioned the $50, we've seen everything. $50 a child adding for Fort Bend ISD, that's less than a 1% raise for every employee and nothing else. And so in the scheme of things, it's not much. And so we're just hopeful that good packages will come forward. But we're watching it and we're doing our due diligence. And, you know, when I get ready to go down the hall in this amazing CTE facility and I see these kids and I realize we're offering that program. So when these children graduate with an associate's degree, to all the parents out there, the parents aren't paying anything. And as a mom who's gotten 2 kids through college, you know, nothing like that happened for my kids. They weren't in this district. And so I'm very proud of the things we're doing at Fort Bend ISD for kids. And I don't want us to have to cut back on those things. That's what makes us amazing and what gives these kids opportunities for no telling what's ahead. So I thank you again for checking in, and we're always available by email, and I'm sure they'll clarify all of that at the end as well. So take care, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you and enjoy the graduation. Next question is from Dexter Hippolyte. And Carolina, he wants to know, are there any new schools as part of the bond?
And so besides the 2 rebuilds that we have talked about, which is Mission Bend and Briargate, we do have one new elementary school planned in the Harvest Green area. And we have the middle school 16 planned in the 521 corridor. So those are the 2 new schools really that would come along with this bond. And of course, it's the rebuild for Clements as well.
Thank you. And I just want to point out that Mr. Hippolyte, if I'm saying your name correctly, as well as Miss Rebecca Broussard are congratulating our graduates today. And that's really something, to get an associate's degree without any tuition having been paid, even before you get your high school diploma, because that happens at the end of May and into June, high school graduation. Mr. Dexter Hippolyte again wants to know, with having foundation issues at Clements, was a risk analysis performed?
So I do believe we have done our due diligence. We have engaged our engineering team and our subject matter experts to help guide us through the process. There were concerns and have been concerns by staff and community, making sure that the building was not dangerous. And so we have engaged our engineering team to evaluate and tell us and let us know that the building is definitely not going to collapse. It does have foundation issues, but it is safe for occupancy at this point.
Thank you very much. And can you speak a little more? And like I said, sometimes we have repeat questions, but are there any other details you can give about the new elementary school plan for the Harvest Green area?
It is definitely driven by growth in the area. It's within the Harvest Green area. Of course, the design has not been selected to date. Like Steve mentioned, we're working on finalizing the deal for the land. And once we have the property, we can start following on the next steps. The new elementary school will most definitely meet the latest and greatest educational specifications that we have for the district, the latest and greatest standards and technology requirements for our new educational specifications. And so it would be designed for a capacity of 1,000 students. And again, it would be in the Harvest Green area.
Thank you very much. This question came up before, and someone wanted to know if we need new computer devices, why don't we reach out to large corporations to donate them? And I know one gentleman mentioned Amazon, Microsoft, Verizon, even all of those companies. He even mentioned there's a big tech company that's based in Japan that's located here that would probably donate devices instead of us having to buy so many. What's wrong with that plan, or what would work with that plan?
So we've actually gotten some grants from some of the corporations in the past, including Verizon. We have computers from Verizon at some of our middle schools and high schools now, and so we're always open to that. But when you're talking about these kinds of dollars, that we're planning on, these corporations do count on, especially the big corporations. They do count on these kinds of purchases or whatever else. And so while there's a fair amount of philanthropy out there, there's not that much philanthropy out there. But we have applied for grants and such before. And like I said, we have that active one still with Verizon, but there's not enough out there for us to avoid asking for this in Proposition B. I wish there was, but there's not.
The big district need a lot of devices. Beth Martinez, perhaps you'd like to take this one. Why are we consolidating schools, and what will happen at those campuses that we are consolidating?
Absolutely. So it's an opportunity for us to maximize the usage of our facilities. And so we looked at 4 criteria as we were reviewing the entire district and looking at the planning horizon over the next 10 years with the projections provided by our external demographer. And one of the things that we first noticed or paid attention to were those areas where we were seeing a decline in enrollment and underutilization in particular buildings. And so one of the areas, there are 2 areas that we're focused on in this coming bond, and those are the Mission Bend, Mission Glen consolidation, and then the Briargate Blue Ridge consolidation. So first, one of the things, as I mentioned, was the utilization of the campus. Also, the size of the acreage where the campus sits, the facility condition index of the campus, and proximity to charters or areas of the district where we're losing students to either other districts or to charters or to private schools. And so with that in mind, Mission Bend was the campus that was identified as one most in need, or the facility condition was most concerning, lower number of students, along with the adjacent school of Mission Glen, both campuses underutilized. So it was an opportunity for us on the site where Mission Bend sits to be able to know that we could utilize that space and demolish that building and rebuild if the bond passes. Now, if the bond were not to pass, we can still experience that cost savings and placing 2 schools into one at the Mission Glen site, which provides the ability to provide additional resources with more students attending in that one school building. Now, when you think about the Blue Ridge and Briargate scenario, we have identified the Briargate site as the one that would be rebuilt. And of course, both of those sites would be built to a larger capacity so that we could place more students there and provide additional resources, have, of course, more parent involvement and more staff members on either of those sites. And with the consolidation of an elementary campus, and the closure or the repurposing, but not using as a traditional kindergarten through 5th grade elementary, you experience approximately $1.4 million each operational year when that additional school is not being operated. So on many levels, many benefits, not only to our students with the addition of more students, more parents, more staff within one location, but also being able to really create efficiencies operationally. And then if a new school is built or when a new school is built, providing current educational specifications and just a really up-to-date learning environment for the students in both of those scenarios.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have a question now from Ms. Angela Hayes. She'd like to know more about the technology upgrades that the bond would fund.
All right, so from a technology perspective, the devices are the devices. I mean, they're same quality of the ones that we have, so we'll be replacing those. But the big dollars $67 million in Proposition A is to replace our network. And so, any chance we have to, we will need to have more bandwidth, because there have been a couple times where it's really gotten tight. And so that's really the whole point of the network. Obviously, we want to improve the reliability, but I do think that that folks will experience faster speeds, okay, in terms of downloads and whatever else, and just responsiveness with the Wi-Fi. But that pretty much covers it.
Thank you. With the technological improvements, will you be able to get better reception in schools?
Yes, for sure. And we know that there's a struggle with that at times. We were originally planning, the district was originally planning on having this bond in 2021. And it needed the network replacement needed to start then, but it got postponed for various reasons. And now here we are in May of 2023. And this is a critical item because of the sometimes we've had a spotty network. And whenever I've talked to teachers about our plans for the network or whatever else, and I ask them, hey, have you experienced network issues? I mean, they're all nodding their heads. And so that is one of the more critical items that we're very worried about.
Thank you. Laura Miller wants to know that in the areas where we are consolidating schools, will charters be able to come in?
Well, students from charters, yeah, I mean, they could certainly, absolutely, they can come back. We have, as a district, we have over 5,000 students with, addresses in our district that attend charter schools. And by all means, and many of them do come back every year. Okay, we lose some kids to charters, and I think they find out that the grass isn't necessarily greener, and so they do come back to us. The problem is usually there's a little bit of learning loss that we have to catch up with, but we do that. I mean, we bring them back, and so we also know that some of them don't meet their graduation requirements because maybe they want to go to the military. They didn't go through the application process to go to a college, and so they may not allow them to graduate. Well, then they come back to us, and we'll help them graduate. And so, by all means, we take all the kids.
Thank you very much. Dexter Hippolyte has another question, and in case he's still on here, Dexter, we want to know, was Beth Martinez your teacher at some point in life? Because that's a pretty unusual name, and she remembers that name. Was he a good student?
Of course he was, yes.
Of course he was. He had you as a teacher. Okay.
Well, he's got good questions so far, that's for sure.
Dexter, I'm going to do my best to decipher your question. So he asks, how do you fund the maintenance after getting bond projects done? So you've built something or you've done something with bond money, and then how do you pay for the maintenance that's required subsequently?
Well, when you're talking about certainly new schools and such, we are, whenever we have more growth, the revenue from the new students does help cover those expenses. Okay. Now, as Ms. Martinez mentioned, whenever we have the rebuilds of the elementary schools, we are going to have savings from the merging of campuses, and so that's going to help us with covering those expenses. And so when it comes to the schools, that's how we finance the ongoing costs of the buildings that we have.
Carolina, you might want to add in, why can't we pay for all these repairs? We have about $600 million worth of repairing older things and older structures. Why must that money come from a bond? And why don't we have some kind of emergency contingency for when we need to fix things?
Steve, you want to jump on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I need to take that one. So I think that's a great question. And the fact is, I think districts over the years, and this is the 5th school district that I've been in, I think since the mid 2010, 2010, whenever I was in San Antonio IC, It was in that time frame where you first started to see, devices come into the bonds and whatever else. And it's really been since since Robinhood was passed and whatever else, and the school districts stopped benefiting from the property value growth that they had. Districts like Fort Bend used to have a sizable reserve, for maintenance and, new, HVAC replacements and things like that, and didn't have to, and was able to fund technology purchases out of the general fund. But as the years have gone by, and as the basic allotment, and what that is, that's how much the state allocates to school districts on a per student basis. That has not grown much over the years. Like I mentioned, there was a big increase in 2019, but it hadn't increased for years before that. And then since 2019, it hasn't changed at all, even though we've had 17% inflation. So the fact is, right now, school districts are struggling to pay teachers what they're worth. They're struggling to fill those positions. They're struggling to pay for bus drivers to compete against the industry. For those guys can go work at and work as truck drivers and make a lot more than working as a bus driver. And so, just frankly, we cannot afford it, given the way that school finance works. All that property, it is very frustrating. It's frustrating, I'm sure, for you to hear it. It's frustrating for me to tell you this. But again, and you may not have heard this from before, but all of that property value growth that we're all writing checks for, we're not seeing the benefit of that here. The state benefits from that, and they are able to, help us push our tax rate down, which is great. But our revenue is based on enrollment. And so our general fund does not have the ability to avoid having these kind of bonds. So, yeah.
Another question we hear a lot: will we be paying teacher raises if the bond passes? Will they come from a successful bond? Raises, hiring, any of that?
Yeah. So bond funds cannot be used for teacher raises. Okay. Now that being said, what I've been telling folks, and these are just the facts. If a bond doesn't pass, we still have all these buildings that need fixes. Okay, we still have the average age of buildings that are 28 years old, and hundreds of millions of dollars of things that need to be fixed across our 100 facilities. And so, and we knew the network needs to be replaced. That's 67 million for a district our size. And so if the bond does not pass, then as things break, the general fund, and if we run out of bond funds, the general fund will have to be used. We have to maintain a network. We have to have HVAC in a building. We can't have leaky roofs. Okay. And so we would end up spending money out of the general fund. So what that means is that we would have that much less flexibility to improve teacher pay above and beyond what the state's going to mandate. And they are going to mandate a raise for teachers, but I don't think it's going to be enough. And so having the bond funds is going to be essential for us to be able to not have to spend general fund money on all these kinds of capital projects.
Carolina, when would projects be finished, and how quickly after a successful bond would work begin, with special attention to the new campuses and the rebuilt campuses?
And so as soon as the bond passes, design work starts immediately. We have been working behind the scenes to get ready for it so that we don't waste much time after the bond passes before we can take action. And so as soon as the bond passes, we would start design work for all projects pretty much. We have an execution plan, and we start working with our architects and engineers to generate design drawings for all these different projects. Of course, depending on the project, that has then a timeline on how long it takes to design that project. More complex projects take longer. Simpler projects, of course, get designed faster. But the design does take time. Even with a resite of Crawford High School for Clements, we could see at least 10 months of design time before we can procure a general contractor and start construction. And so Now, for the rebuilds, though, we have gone to the board already, and we are ready for Briargate and Mission Bend. In those, I guess design would be compressed and executed faster, but we could still see another 6 months of design time for those. And so it does take a little while for us to go through design, engineering, permitting with the different jurisdictions, and procuring general contractors. But then again, there are simpler projects that we could deploy way faster. And so a good example is playgrounds. We put all those playgrounds together into a single package or project, and we're able to deploy those fast. And so within a few months of the bond passing, we could start seeing playgrounds being deployed and installed. And there's many other components just like that could be deployed faster.
Thank you. A question about Clements High School, and this is one that I've heard you address before. If a new Clements High School is built, what's to keep the new school from also sinking the way the current school is?
And so the new Clements High School would actually be designed with a structural slab. Sometimes it's referred as suspended slab with slab piers. And so it's a different method for the foundation of the building, where the piers bypass what we call unstable soils, go deep into the soil until we reach stable areas. And so that slab, structural slab or suspended slab, behaves separately from the soil. So if the soil expands or contracts, it doesn't have any impact on the slab. This is a more expensive method, but it guarantees we wouldn't see foundation issues like the ones we're seeing today.
Is that the same as a pier and beam?
There's all sorts of different descriptions for different types of foundations, so I wouldn't dare to go that way.
Thank you. And next question. How does the district decide what projects are needed at each campus? I've seen some schools where the allotment for bond funds will be $750,000, and I've seen some where that school would get $35 million worth of projects. Explain that.
Absolutely. And so the process starts with a facilities assessment. And so we work with subject matter experts to walk each and every facility. This is a very lengthy process that takes about a year. We do this every time in preparation of a bond. The goal, of course, is to understand the condition of our facilities and to truly dive deep into each and every facility. And so when I say we work with subject matter experts, we not only work with architects and engineers, but we bring in roofers, and we bring in sports consultants and child nutrition specialists. And so we look at each and every component for each and every building, from foundation to parking lot to roofs, to kitchens, to classrooms and windows, and flooring and structure. Each and every component gets evaluated and analyzed. And so, and then it truly, that data gets collected and gets analyzed for each and every facility. The goal is to address the needs for every facility as they come. And what I mean with that is not every building is the same. While one building may have a need for new air conditioning system, another building may have a need for a new roof, and another building may have a need for new flooring. And so all systems behave different in different buildings at different times. And that is why you see the difference in allotment and in components per building, because we address the needs of every building individually, really.
Thank you, Carolina. We have a two-part question from Sasha Udengard. She wants to know what will happen to the elementary schools that are no longer in use once we consolidate schools and build one new school for what used to be two campuses. What will happen to the unused schools?
All right, so let me take on that question. So, if the bond passes, Briargate will be rebuilt, Mission Bend will be rebuilt. As far as what will happen to Blue Ridge and Mission Glen, that has not been determined. Okay, that can happen in a couple of years' time or whatever else. But we would look at the possibility of selling those sites, like commercial, like Blue Ridge, is in a commercial area, right along McCard Road. That's not necessarily the case with Mission Glen where it's at. Maybe that's a site that would be used for to help us. Maybe we'd have a facilities department there. I mean, we don't know. Maybe we'd have a pre-K center. We don't know. There's all kinds of things that could happen with those. Maybe it'd be a training center, or maybe we would sell it. We have not made any kind of determination along those lines.
Thank you, Steve. Sasha's next question is, what happened to the bus tracking system that was on the last bond and was supposed to be installed in 2020, but was put on hold due to COVID?
Well, I don't think that, I don't remember there being a tracking system on there. Now, we did have in that bond, the scholarship program, a student ID badging system, and we do have that in place. And it hasn't necessarily been the easiest thing to implement because we've had some serious problems with the contractor. But I wasn't under the impression that was funded, for the transportation side. Our goal is to have something like that using badges for this coming bond. But I'm not aware of that for the 2018 bond. Does that ring a bell, Carolina?
No, I don't believe so. It's more like the system for the student badges.
Right.
That at some point has the capability of expanding and going into some sort of a tracking system for buses.
Right. And so that's what we're going to try to take advantages in this coming bond.
Okay, Sasha. So in this bond, there is an item for bus tracking. Rashad wants to know, when does the district foresee the next bond election if this one passes or if it fails?
If this bond passes, what I could see happening this summer is, us and then, administration, and we have three board elections, during the same time. I can see us and the new board, maybe it's the same board, working together to put together a strategic plan. And I think that's going to help determine, the timing. The other thing, now that we're looking at rebuilding schools, I think we're going to try to work more closely with the city of Sugar Land, the city of Missouri City, the city of Richmond, to, kind of get in sync with what the cities are doing, because as we vacate campuses, which just gets to the question, that we're talking about there, we'd want to get an idea from the city is, what do they think the best use of that building would be? Is there some other kind of redevelopment that they could potentially have planned for it? And so that whole planning process, would need to take place. It certainly wouldn't be any earlier than November of 25, that's for sure. I think probably the earliest would be May of 26, but we don't know. But I will tell you that since we've started the rebuild process, though, people have already asking, well, when can our school get rebuilt? Because we do have a lot of old campuses, and so we'll have to see what happens in those planning sessions. And if everybody says, well, let's go sooner, well, then I guess we'll go sooner. But I'd be very surprised if it was any earlier than I would say the earliest November 25, more likely the spring of 26.
Steve, I'll bet you can guess the school I hear the most questions about, when will we get a rebuild, is Dulles.
Oh, Dulles, yeah.
Yeah, Dulles.
Yeah, so
why aren't they getting a rebuild?
Why aren't they getting a rebuild? Well, really, it's based on the facility condition index. If you took some time to walk through Dulles and then take some time to walk through Clemens, the answer is obvious. A lot of money has been poured in Dulles over the years, and I think there's over 20 million planned for this coming year. I don't have that number in front of me, but that building is in much better shape. It does not have the foundation issues that Clemens has. Now, that doesn't mean it won't be rebuilt in the future. It doesn't mean that. But we are going to use that facility condition index to help us with our decisions in the future, because it doesn't make sense to keep buildings that are really in bad shape. But yeah, if you look at those two buildings as they are now, A lot of money's been spent in those, and it's really in great shape in comparison.
And I want to just point out, for clarity's sake, Facility Condition Index, also known as FCI, the higher the number, the worse shape the building is in.
That's correct.
We have Sasha Udengard again. I hope I'm saying your name correctly, Sasha. If I'm not, it's still fun to say. She wants to know, why are newer schools needing millions of dollars of work?
Caroline, you want to take that one?
I mean, I'm trying to think which one.
I mean, I would address Madden. Why don't you address Madden?
And so Madden, it is a fairly new school. It does have foundation issues. Of course, we've been working really to try to identify what caused the issue, when and how. But Madden does not have a structural slab. And in the last few buildings, we really have learned our lesson, and we've been building with a structural slab to make sure that we don't really see these issues in the future. But Madden doesn't have it. So far, we know that based on our investigation and findings that the select fill at Madden is not performing as anticipated. Of course, Madden has a slab on grade, and it's a different type of foundation that sits on the grade or in soil. And that soil that's underneath, it's not behaving properly as expected. And so we have seen some heaving of the concrete slab. Of course, there's still investigation. There's still different types of measurements and surveys being performed. But we have to address some of those issues. And there's lots of cracks and movement within that building. And so that's the one that I could think that's carrying money to really repair that foundation. But moving forward, again, we're not building those buildings with slabs on grade. All the new campuses have been built now with structural slab to prevent foundation issues. We realize it's a more expensive investment, but it's worth the money. Besides that, I don't really see any other newer campus with large amounts of money. At some point, certain systems need to be replaced, and we do that when the right time comes. But the newer the campus, the less the expense.
Thank you, Carolina, because Sasha said Madden is the school that she was thinking of. So thank you, Steve, for suggesting that Carolina address that one. She also says Dulles is in really great shape. Let the record show that the clock showing behind Deputy Superintendent Martinez's desk is correct. We're about out of time. It is now 6:59. I don't see any other questions in the queue. So would any of our presenters like to make any final statements besides reminding everyone we are in the middle of early voting right now, and it goes through next Tuesday, May 2nd, and you can vote this weekend, Saturday and Sunday.
So I would just like to say that everybody does need to understand that when you're voting, if you're not happy with the district or whatever else, you have to understand what a vote no means. Okay, so what a vote no means is, again, not having the bond funds needed to cover all these projects we're talking about and the fixes that we're talking about. But it does put us into a bad position from a compensation perspective, with our teachers. So everybody does need to understand what a vote no means. So what we encourage you is to just spend some time on the website. There's a ton of information out there, and also the three of us on this call are all very easy to reach. Please, you can use my email, steven.bassett@fortbendisd.com, and I will respond. You can also use Let's Talk. And I do respond. We all respond to those, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have. And we certainly appreciate your spending some time with us tonight.
I think I would just add, of course, appreciate your time so very much and for your interest and letting us have this opportunity to provide this information. As Steve said, take a look at the website, and on the bond website, you can drill down to every single campus if you're interested in your particular feeder pattern or the campuses in your area to see what is planned for the bond with regard to a particular campus. So there's just a wealth of information there. You can also see what has been accomplished and how the 2018 bond was handled too. There's incredible resources there to see that past track record. So I would just encourage you to do that, stay informed, and take the opportunity for these extended hours and certainly the Saturday and Sunday early voting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, presenters, Steve Bassett, Beth Martinez, Carolina Fazzetti, and Dr. Whitbeck, who is enjoying the graduation of some of our high school students who are right now getting associate degrees from college. Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.